Hi, Linda Davis. Good to see you.
Has everyone from the waiting room joined us, Lori?
There is no one else in the waiting room. So everyone is in the meeting. A couple of people are still connecting to audio, but people are here and should be able to hear you.
Great. Good afternoon. You'll all be pleased to know that my computer is completely updated. It was the inopportune timing of my computer's decision to update, which caused the delay. So thank you so much for your patience. I'm very excited as our current mayor to welcome all of you to this, our first virtual town hall for 2021. In recent years, each of our mayors has conducted coffees with the mayor, which have migrated around town to acquaint us with different resources. And I was dreaming of doing that and picking all of the sites that would be good prospects. But of course, for safety's sake, virtual is the way to go. And it's very exciting to see some familiar faces and names, and also to see some new names. I hope as many of you as possible will put your video on because I'd love to associate faces with names. So thank you all for being here. We're going to cover some, before I move to the program, let me just cover some brief Zoom etiquette. Although I suspect most people are becoming quite professional at this by this time. Have we muted folks as a host function? All right. So you cover two screens. That means I won't be able to see you waving necessarily. So when we get to question time, if you go to the participants icon, and for folks with a PC, that will be on the bottom. If you're on a phone, it may be on the top. But if you click on the participants icon, one of the options is raise hand. And that will put a little raised hand icon next to your name so that we'll know that you have a question. We have quite a few folks from the city on the call, so I'm not going to introduce all of them at this point. We'll see who might have occasion to speak, but I do want to feature some key folks that I'm positive will be called upon. Our Mayor Pro Tem, Jan Harnick, is with us. Give us a wave, Jan. Our interim city manager, Randy Binder, and our public information officer, David Herman, with a big smile. And I also see our Director of Economic Development, Martine Alvarez. Want to give us a wave, Martine? And our Director of Community Development, Ryan Stindell, and Director of Finance, Janet Moore, and Lori Carney, who directs our Human Resources and IT. What's your title, Lori?
It's Director of Administrative Services.
Terrific. Thank you. And there are quite a few others who may weigh in as their topics become relevant. Clearly, the topic of most import and greatest interest to folks right now is the pandemic, COVID-19, and all of its ramifications. And from the beginning of this challenge, the city's focus has been to help all of our residents and our businesses get through this. Our focus has been upon public health and supporting our businesses in every way that we possibly can. That has several dimensions. The first is just we are an agent of important messages for the public. So we've had a key COVID-19 a special website accessible from our city website from the beginning for information and resources, stressing the importance of everyone following best practices, the simple steps of masks, distancing, and hand washing. We know that an important element of controlling the virus is testing. And I want to give Randy Binder an opportunity to share about a key development on that front. Randy?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I am pleased to report that the city will have a new Coba testing site, and it will open tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. At the UCR campus at Cook and Frank Sinatra. Folks will enter from the driveway on Frank Sinatra Burger Drive, I believe it is, and follow the signs from there. It will be open Monday through Saturday from 8 to 4 p.m. Whether you have health insurance or not, everyone is welcome, but appointments are going to be needed. You can, Stephen Arian, our risk manager, has been working hard on this and just got up and running today the appointment calendar. So if you go to www.curative.com, curative.com, you can sign up for an appointment, and it's a drive-through facility. Good job.
Thank you, and thank you to the staff who have been working hard to provide that. And I assume that all of the information will be accessible from the COVID-19 tab on the website, right? Great.
Correct.
I want to touch on two topics of keen interest as reflected by the questions that were submitted from some of you before this town hall. The first is, are we doing enough by way of messaging to encourage all of our residents to follow those simple 3 steps that I mentioned? Masking, distancing, and hand washing. Your questions included some good ideas, and we're of course open to adding to our methods of messaging. Here's my personal perspective. We need to change some opinions. the people who are not wearing masks aren't doing it because they forgot. They're doing it because they made a choice. And I've really racked my brain as to how to influence those people. So very, very soon we're going to be adding to our messaging some direct testimony from people most affected by this pandemic. And it's my candid hope that that kind of information will change some opinions. Because my thought is that's what we need to get closer to 100% support of best practices. The other topic, which was asked about quite a lot in the questions, was what about enforcement? Why do we from time to time see this business or that business not being compliant with state and county health orders? I want to start by giving a stroke to the 95% of our businesses who have been supportive of all of the health orders from the beginning of this crisis. That 95% have stepped up, even though there's a significant hardship to them. And I hope that everyone on this town hall is doing what you can to support those businesses facing hardship because of their support of public health, whether it's takeout orders for restaurants or delivery orders from other businesses. We have had some businesses that have not been compliant. It is Palm Desert's policy that there should be consistent adherence to the state and county orders. So we've used a series of tools to have an impact. Those include, first and foremost, education. There have been businesses who simply weren't aware since orders have changed from time to time. We've supplemented our financial support significantly for those businesses that are following the guidelines and therefore have an adverse impact. And in those cases where education or financial support don't have the desired impact, we collaborate with county and state licensing agencies. It's noteworthy to me that the businesses who were in the news on the topic of enforcement a month ago are not in the news now. And that tells me we're having the intended impact. Each week, it seems that there's a different issue to address, and we're addressing them. So that's what I want to assure all of you who have had questions about that. Obviously, the big topic now is how the heck to get the vaccine, which is in the hands of the county as the recipient of our vaccine. But your city wants to be as helpful as possible because we know this is of such critical importance. So we're engaged with the county and we're going to do everything we possibly can to facilitate additional sites, more accessibility, and a better system so that all of us who are eager to get the vaccine will be able to do so. Let me just ask if there are questions about those topics before I lay out our intended format?
If I may, Mayor, the Stephen Arian put the link to the curative site for making appointments. It's in the chat box if anyone would like to go there and get it.
Super. All right. There will be a series of these town hall engagements in different parts of the city. We had hoped to make the north sphere of the city the focus for this town hall, although I can see we've drawn a nice broad cross section of Palm Desert. So with the north sphere in mind, I asked Mr. Stindell, our Director of Community Development, to share with us. Here's a bit of background. I first got involved in city government back in 2013 when I was reading my Bright Side, and it said there would be an extensive process to plan the future of Palm Desert called Envision Palm Desert. And the article encouraged people who wanted to participate to volunteer. So I did. And lo and behold, so did about 150 other people from all over the city. So that process, and I see several faces who are also part of that process, extended over, I think, 18 months, if I'm not mistaken, and had a host of sessions, in-depth discussions, and ultimately informed what became the current general plan for Palm Desert. So Mr. Stindell is going to share with us to give us an overview of that plan, but then particularly to home in on the vision for the North Sphere and where we are in the implementation of that vision.
Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. Can everybody see my PowerPoint screen? Okay, bear with me for a second while my presentation loads up. All righty. As the mayor indicated, this presentation comes on the heels of a very successful strategic plan process led by none other than David Herman, who's on the line this afternoon. And my charge today is to go a little bit deeper into what the City Council's vision is for the north end of town. I like to start these presentations out not necessarily knowing who's in the room, with just a little background on who the city is and where we came from. Incorporated in 1973, we operate as a charter city led by a 5-member elected city council. Our current population is just north of 50,000 residents. We are an area of 26 square miles and at the geographic center of the Coachella Valley. And our economy is heavily reliant on the retail and tourism industries. As the mayor mentioned, we had an extremely successful Envision Palm Desert process in 2013, and the council was eager for more, which led us to a general plan update approved in November of 2016. Now, generally, I'm violating one of my most sacred rules with public presentations, and both of the bullet points that I just placed on the screen are much too big for a public presentation, but I'm going to violate that rule and read both of them aloud because the first bullet point occurs on page 1 of the general plan, and the second bullet point occurs on page 4 of the general plan. These are foundational statements on behalf of the document. The vision statement, as approved by the City Council, states that Palm Desert is the heart of California's Coachella Valley. Our intent is to create a town with great neighborhoods, anchored by a true downtown and a vibrant, walkable university center, connected by safe, comfortable streets for all. And then moving on a few pages, there's a statement that cars are an important part of our transportation system, but too great an emphasis on accommodating the automobile has made walking and bicycling as a part of daily life difficult, leading to increased air pollution and a variety of public health issues. These are really important throughout the entire document, as there are lots of ties to creating what we call more in-city trips, getting people out of their cars for some of the trips they do on a daily basis or possibly on the weekend. It could be done by stepping out of the automobile, taking your bicycle, walking, or any other mode of transportation that might get you active. So where are we headed? In that general plan, there's this map that defines two main areas of transformation, and they were mentioned in that vision statement: the city's core downtown area and the area surrounding the university, generally the north end of town, centered around Cook Street and I-10. We're going to spend a little bit of time looking at those plans this afternoon. Before we get into too much of the approved projects and what's under construction, let's give you a little frame of reference. Today, when I'm speaking of the north side, the North Sphere, we're looking at this general map. Bound on the bottom of the screen, if you can see my cursor running along, is Frank Sinatra Drive. The diagonal line running through the center is Interstate 10, which is the northern city limit boundary for City of Palm Desert. In the middle, you'll see Cook Street, and to the left of that, you'll see Portola. We'll continue to use this slide as time goes on, and you'll get used to it at some point. The first asset to point your attention to, public asset, is Riverside County Sheriff's Substation, serving the region of unincorporated Riverside County, Rancho Mirage, Palm Desert, and Indian Wells. There's a future park, a regional park site, 26 acres of regional park, coupled with an additional 10 acres of housing authority owned property set aside for an affordable housing development. There are two existing public park facilities. Both University Dog Park and University Park East are neighborhood serving parks for the neighborhoods that will be built in the future. And lastly, but most importantly, approximately 200 acres secured by the City Council in the 1990s with the express goal of creating a four-year university benefiting Palm Desert and the broader Coachella Valley. So one of the things that we talk a lot about in the general plan is walkability and getting out of your car, in-city trips, if you will. And one of the things that I do as a planner is look at something we call intersection spacing or densities. And there's really no easy way to explain this, so I try and use a visual depiction. Both of these maps on the screen are different parts of Palm Desert represented at the same scale. On the left, you see the Highway 111, El Paseo, the older parts of Palm Desert, and on the right, you see generally north of Hoveley Lane East. What you see on the left is that the streets are much closer together. The intersection spacing is much tighter and compact together, as opposed to on the right, where you have these large square blocks of land. Each one can have its own strategy as far as achieving the walkability or bikeability goals. We just get there in different ways. And I'll get into a little bit about how we do that. In the north end of town, we look inwards to the project, and we're beginning to start mixing uses. What you see on the screen is a planning tool where we look at quarter-mile, half-mile diameter bubbles to indicate where it's reasonable that a resident might walk without getting the feeling that it's too far and they'll just jump in the car. That leads us to land planning similar to what is shown on the screen, where yellow is your low to medium density residentials, your orange is your medium to higher density residentials, and your red tends to be neighborhood serving commercial or office uses, so that it's conceivable that you might have a coffee shop or a small restaurant, barber shop, or your local CPA's office within a walking distance of your house. And what does that look like from a product standpoint? You tend to start seeing more townhomes and vertical, more compact development. And we even start to see multi-story mixed use projects where you can have ground floor retail. Your second and third stories could either be apartments or additional layers of office building, depending on the appropriateness within the zone. So I wanted to briefly touch on what's out there, what's been approved, and what's coming. On the screen right here is a visual depiction of the Millennium Master Plan. Now, I know there's several of the attendees in the room who are new residents, and I've spoken with several of you of Genesis. And Genesis is nearing completion at the northeast corner of Portola and Gerald Ford Drive, but was part of a much larger master plan from Portola to Cook Street, north of Gerald Ford, encompassing some retail, some public park and open space, and as you get closer to Cook Street, some higher density residential serving future faculty and students that could be at the Cal State campus. All of this is approved. While Genesis is the only bit that's under construction, most of this land is teed up and ready to develop at any time. On the left of the screen, you're seeing what's often referred to in the news as the Blackrock Development. Blackrock, one of the largest investment pools in the world, has purchased 170 acres within the city of Palm Desert and is entitled and is nearing construction on approximately 1,100 units, starting at the southeast corner of Portola and Gerald Ford Drive. You have lower density housing comparable to what you'll see at Genesis. Moving a little bit closer to the college, you transition into a denser product, ultimately leading into some apartments and again, places where your faculty, some of your short-term faculty and students possibly could live. This development was a success in using those radius rings, as we did come to a ratio that every household had a recreational amenity within a quarter-mile walk of its front door. So this was a good example of how that planning worked out to the better of the future community. And on the right, you're seeing Sage, a project that's at the corner of Dick Kelly Drive in Portola. It's Ponderosa Homes is building that. They have started their models and pulled 20 permits. They have sold 16 homes and are extremely happy with the pace they're moving out there. There's 111 units going up right there, and they expect to be working in there for a couple of years with their current absorption rates and sales. On the commercial and hospitality side, everybody's excited about a Chick-Fil-A. It began construction last week at the corner of Monterey and Dinah Shore. In that same project, you'll see quickly following a Quick Quack car wash for those of us that like to take our car through the car wash regularly. At Cook and I-10, you're seeing a new Holiday Inn Express currently being built just south of the DMV. And just to the west of there, a light industrial building that's going to be the future home of the La Quinta Brewing Company. Lastly, got to touch a little bit about the university planning, because this has been one of the city council's goals for a very long time and will still remain a high goal into the future. I use this same map again, and just for reference, Frank Sinatra to the bottom, I-10 at diagonal, Cook Street right down the center. And we love to tell this story because in the 1990s, the city council planted their flag out here and stated there will be a four-year university, and darn it, let's get a Cal State Palm Desert built. But what we don't often recognize is just how much potential exists in the area. The quadrant or the triangle that we've identified represents approximately 1,000 acres of developable land. And that may to us just feel like the blow sand we pass on the way to the freeway. But what if I told you from a area planning perspective, the entire U of A campus in Tucson fits in there? And not that I'm suggesting building downtown in North Palm Desert, but that the city of downtown LA fits out in the north end of town. I show you that only to reinforce the opportunity we have, the opportunity the council has taken by carefully planning this area to be complementary to a Cal State Palm Desert in the future, And it's one of their highest and top priorities that we in the community development and planning departments, along with our partners all over City Hall, are working to try and effectuate every day. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions or give this back to the mayor for facilitation.
Let me just ask a couple of questions to start, which I think will help clarify things. You've shown us spectacular plans, and I think a logical question people might have is when? When do we get to see some of that actually happen? So perhaps you could share a bit more about the status of University Park.
Yeah, and that's oftentimes a question that staff doesn't have certainty is we're not writing the checks. But just most recently, last city council meeting, when pressed, the developer responded that they were looking to start, was it Q4, if I recall correctly? They were looking to start towards the end of this calendar year, moving dirt at the southeast corner of Portola and Gerald Ford would be the place where Blackrock starts their development.
Yes, with actual completion of units in 2022.
Correct, Q1 2022. This land is luckily already teed up for development. A lot of the horizontal infrastructure has already been installed from a prior developer who was unfortunately a casualty of the Great Recession. That being said, there's still an awful lot to do out there. So the developer was pretty candid with the city council that it's probably not going to see any vertical completed until we're in 2022.
And this is something that some folks on the call fully comprehend, but others may not be steeped in. The city can make plans, but we need development partners from the private sector who are prepared to actually make the investment. And of course, the recession slowed down all projects. Real estate didn't really recover from the recession by the time of the pandemic. But because we have such comprehensive plans, we are good partners for those developers who are prepared to make investments, and we're pleased that this significant part of the vision for the North Sphere will be moving forward. Before I take questions for Ryan, I want to give a couple other folks a chance to address some specific parts of this. Mayor Pro Tem Arnick has been very involved in the effort to push forward planning for CSUSB Palm Desert campus. And so I wonder if I could ask you to share a bit with folks about the status of that effort.
Certainly. Thank you, Mayor. We are recognizing, and of course, as Ryan Stendell said, it's been years in the making, and councils, well before I was on city council, recognized the value of coming together and supporting a Cal State University that would not only provide the education for Palm Desert, but of course for our whole region. And, this is you can go off on the tangent about what we had said earlier, that we are so focused on tourism, but as we saw in COVID, that's also a detrimental impact of COVID, not to have a broader economic base. And a CSU, of course, can then provide that broader economic base and giving accessible, high quality, relevant education to our entire valley, and certainly to all of Palm Desert. We are working as a group with something called Priority 1 Coachella Valley, or Priority 1 CV, which of course is education. That's what we need most so that we can excel. There is a group of us working. It is 2 council members, Todd Hooks, who is economic development for Agua Caliente, Joe Wallace, who's the head of Coachella Valley Economic Partnership, and a few others. And we are working hard with Sacramento to put the emphasis on this campus becoming an independent campus. We do have some advantages. First of all, the land is there, and that was a gift from Palm Desert. Also, every single one of the buildings there are built by donors. There's not any money that was put forth by the state, by CSU. This was all done because of the people who recognize the importance to our region. We have another advantage that it was almost a who saw this coming, but COVID, as we all know, has accelerated many processes, and additionally, it has magnified many issues that existed before. Because of the status of this CSU, and it's CSU SB PDC, so it's San Bernardino Palm Desert campus, we have been virtually educating a number of our students. And COVID has caused more virtual, more online education. So we are ahead of the game in Palm Desert at this campus, and we can prove to be a model for other campuses throughout the state. So we have a lot of advantages from the direction that we're coming, and that kind of inadvertently we've been going all along. And now we have a chance to really create an asset of that situation and leverage on it further. So we meet as we need it, at least a minimum of every month. We're fortunate. We have people like Assemblymember Eduardo Garcia, Assemblymember Chad Mays, our local supervisor Perez. We have all these people who are helping us push this effort forward, recognizing the importance to the entire valley and to it broadening its economic base, and also providing the quality of life for the entire valley that we all believe every one of our residents deserves. And unless there's any other thing you'd like me to specifically talk to, I think that's a nice broad overview.
Thank you so much, Jan. And well, most of the public conversation is about getting to the place where Palm Desert campus is its own freestanding campus. From the student perspective, what's most important is expansion of programs. And because whatever it's called, their goal is to have access to a variety of educational programs. And thankfully, the city's investment in an innovation hub has been key to adding a cybersecurity study program there. So, Jan, I'll come back to you about another topic, but a hot topic in the questions submitted beforehand was, what about this sports stadium? What is the city doing to think about its potential impacts? So I want to ask Interim Manager Randy Binder to share with us just about that prospect and what kind of process it will be subject to.
Oh, thank you, Madam Mayor. I actually had contact with the county this afternoon. Good timing on that. So the arena that supposedly is moving from Palm Springs to the Classic Club area, there would be a number of hurdles that the developer would have to go through with the county for approvals. There has been nothing that's been formally submitted to the city, but I'd like to let everybody know, rest assured, the City of Palm Desert staff will look out for your interests and thoroughly require any impacts mitigated from the county and the developer if this project moves forward. The county planner that has been assigned to this project is named Russell Brady. There is a county website from their planning department where you can keep track of how things progress. It says, according to this project, so far is 0%, so it hasn't progressed very far. There would be a number of land use applications, including a zone change and a general plan amendment and an addendum to their environmental impact report. Ryan could correct me if I'm wrong on that, but that's my understanding. None of which have been routed to the city for comment yet. So rest assured, we are monitoring it closely. We are keeping the city council in the loop on it, and the public as well, if there's any, when the time comes for input on it. I think we probably are all pretty much on the same page in terms of making sure that if the project moves forward, all the impacts are mitigated adequately to preserve quality of life. Something to keep in mind, and I think the mayor touched on this, is that there's you have your zoning and your planning, but then you rely on developers to build. Well, in this case, there's also a big difference between the developer making an announcement and something actually going through the entitlement process, getting approved, and actually getting under construction. So I don't know how optimistic the developers are eternally optimistic, right? But in terms of the project moving forward, we have not seen anything concrete, formal or informal yet. And I didn't touch base with Ryan on this today, but is there anything I missed, Ryan, that you could add to it? To require a zone change and a general plan amendment and an addendum to environmental impact report and going through the county process on that, that is a monumental task in and of itself. So any announcements that we've read in the paper or heard about are or anecdotal are just that. They're
Michael Rosenkrantz asks in the chat, can we support a hockey stadium given the amount of water and other resources that it will take? What about global warming? Would it be fair to say, Randy, that those are the sorts of questions that a county process would address?
Yes, absolutely. Those are the things that we would look for and more, of course.
Mayor, and correct me if I'm wrong, please, but isn't that actually in Cathedral City's sphere of influence? And I think it's important for people to know that.
Sure, I can expand on that if you'd like, Mayor.
Let's work, because we got a late start, we're going to be a little bit tight for time. So let's come back to the explanation if that's of interest. I do want to ask you, Jan, to touch briefly on another topic relevant to what we've covered before I ask for questions. And that's the Portola on-ramp, off-ramp, the Portola Interchange.
Okay, and I would be happy to, and if I start to throw in some acronyms, please catch me and I'll, what is it? We need an AFD, which is an acronym-free discussion. So the Portola Interchange is on something called the TPPS, and that's the Transportation Project List for the Coachella Valley Association of Governments. When it was initially put on, we were looking at perhaps a $70 million project. Today, without all of the negotiations having been completed, we are looking at something that might come to the number of $120 million. We are still working with Union Pacific, and the Union Pacific is it's a very powerful entity and has a lot of negotiating power. And what they sometimes ask for, we may not feel is just, but they are the, how's that go, the 500-pound gorilla. But we are working for that. Now, to understand a little further, how do those projects get built, and it is with Measure A funds. And a Measure A fund is something that the voters put in place a number of years ago and then renewed it. And it is a 0.5-cent sales tax that is generated within the county of Riverside. So we're called a self-help county because we generate that revenue from Measure A. So Measure A funds go towards that project as well. Right now, Measure A funds fared much better than we thought they would given COVID. But we're not so sure that that will continue. It also, there's TUMP fees and LTF. LTF is local transportation funds, which is a 1/4 cent state sales tax that we'll see funds from. Keep in mind that the county is the lead agency on this project, on the Portola Interchange. They will be leading as this project goes along. But it also goes through the Coachella Valley Association of Governments, who then is in charge of all the projects, the grade separations in the East Valley, paving over dirt roads in the East Valley. So there are a lot of issues that will help us understand where we are in line. We know that we want to help mitigate the traffic that is occurring on Monterey and on Cook, and Portola will help us. And certainly it will help us build that one area. And I wish I had Ryan's cursor right now to show you where, but it will help us build that Genesis project and build that area up in a nice way. Thank you, Ryan. So it's a project we're looking at. We're going to have to go, we had kind of pulled back from it a little bit. And now watching as things go forward, we're going to go back to the table with the Coachella Valley Association of Governments and see where we can get it on that list. But again, we want to be ready. It's probably $120 million project. We're hoping there will be stimulus funds in the new administration that will come out, and hopefully we are ready to grab those funds and build that project. So we're looking at stimulus funds, both federal, state, and we're hoping we can get this done. But it's a long process, and it's going to take a lot of conversations.
Wow. Yes. We're going to pause to just catch up with questions. And I promised Carlos Garcia that he could jump in with the first question after we covered all of this turf. So could you unmute Carlos to ask his question, please?
Hi. Thank you for giving me the chance to speak. There are several. I'm pleased to see that there are some thinking. There's been some thinking about all of these things over the years, but there's not been. I must say that people who are moving to this neighborhood, because I live in the Genesis neighborhood and the Genesis developments. I'm living new to the area, to this town, as many people down here are. And we're not very aware of any of this planning or thinking, long-range planning. There's not been any real, we weren't here. So when you were developing the plan, and now that we are here, we're still not aware of it. So there's been a bit of a communications gap, and a perfectly understandable one, but something that I do think needs to be addressed. We need to have a clear idea about what the long-range expectations are, timelines. We saw the whole Millennium map, the map for the whole area, but our development is nearly done, but nothing else has happened. Nothing else has happened. Admittedly, one corner of our section is supposed to be a commercial, and everything commercial is sort of like, retail has been really whacked over the head. So we understand that there's going to be some delays, but still, a lot of more communications need to happen. For example, the timeline on that big park that you're talking about, the 23-acre park. We would like to have a voice in thinking about it and the planning on it. And and how, what features it has and what the timeline on that is. And so I would hope that the HOAs and the citizens of this area would have a chance to opine. That's my thought.
Absolutely. Ryan, I'll ask you to follow up after I just say a couple of words. Carlos, thank you. Thank you. Because you're so right. Those of us who have been steeped in this planning since 2013 can easily forget that our city has added many residents in recent years who aren't familiar with the planning. And frankly, scheduling this town hall made me more conscious and aware of that. So I think everyone on this call from the city has increased awareness that it is important to continuously communicate about the plan, where we are, and where the opportunities for input are. And certainly, the composition of that regional park will be a key place to get community input. Ryan, you want to say a few more words about that?
Yeah, just that I'm here and available anytime. There is down in the weeds answers to probably just about everything you've asked, especially the park, how it's funded, when it happens, how it's designed. None of that happens without the community. And being newer members of the community, we're getting to know each other as well. Over the last few weeks, I've had the opportunity to meet Stephen Nelson, I believe the president of your HOA, for Genesis, and have actually been out in the field observing some landscape and traffic safety concerns with them. So I'll suggest to anybody on the call, I don't maybe necessarily know you yet, but you now know me. Call me. I'm pretty easy to find. It's a two-way street. Let's get to know each other. I'd be happy to introduce you to any and all plans that the city has.
And Ryan's offer is something I'd like to emphasize for all of us. We are still a pretty small city, and any of you can call up the city council office at any time to make an appointment with one or more of your council members on some issues. There are folks who make individual appointments with all 5 of us. Neve Ortega, our assistant, I see is on this call, and she's a super pleasant person, so you'll enjoy calling and talking to her. So call or email. We're accessible, as is the staff. So take advantage of that opportunity. So do we have other questions following up on the ground that we've covered so far? And again, if you go to the participant tab, there's a place to click raise hand so that we know you want to speak. While you're thinking about that, we can go back to Randy and he can explain the sphere of influence concept.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So the sphere of influence is the area that the, using an acronym, LAFCO, Local Agency Formation Commission, that each county in California has. It is an area that is planned for expansion or further development of a city. And the city of Palm Desert doesn't have a sphere of influence north of I-10. And I believe that's true, Ryan. And I know that when Cathedral City expanded their sphere of influence, which is really a precursor to annexing land to be within a city boundary, when Cathedral City applied to LAFCO to add land to their sphere of influence north of Interstate 10 and east of the extension of Bob Hope Drive, which would have been Rio del Sol Road out there, the Local Agency Formation Commission, in their wisdom, added this land to that sphere of influence application because it wasn't in a sphere of influence at all. It was never part of Palm Desert. And as far as I know, Ryan could correct me on that, but so the idea with the arena or anything else that's built under the county, the city that has the sphere of influence there would be the first step if it was to be annexed from the county, and the next thing would then to be annexed into the city limits itself. But in order to do those kinds of things, detailed and rational and logical pro formas and economic and infrastructure studies would need to be done before your staff, city council, would recommend approval of something like that. Environmental impacts, economic impacts, quality of life impacts, all of those things would need to be addressed adequately.
All right, wake up, everybody.
Sorry, was that boring? Really? We want to go boring. Go watch a LAFCO board meeting.
No, just to try to distill it. Let me take an effort at distilling it, Randy, and you can correct me if I get something wrong. That we have an agency that tries to allocate unincorporated land to nearby jurisdictions.
Correct.
And groups unincorporated land together to make sure that no jurisdiction can cherry pick. In other words, to prevent Palm Desert from just annexing Sun City, Palm Desert, but not the surrounding area.
Yes. Cherry pick is the term that they use, yes.
So the sphere of influence that includes where the stadium would be also extends to the west and extends as far as Bermuda Dunes. So it's a really pretty big sphere of influence, which currently is deemed most likely to belong with Cathedral City.
Yes.
Kim Floyd has his hand up. Could you please unmute Kim Floyd? Hi, Kim. Just a second. We don't try unmuting your.
There we go.
Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor. The comments from Mr. Garcia, I think, seems to me begs the question of whether district representation would address these issues of communications that we're talking about, at least potentially.
Is there a question?
Yes, or is the city considering expanding the district voting to 5 districts so that there's closer personal representation in these geographic areas that are removed somewhat from where most of our representatives currently live?
So you've pointed out one potential upside to districts, which is that it could be a tool for communications. There are also downsides. For example, I currently reside in District 2, which means I get to have a voice in selecting 4 different council members. And 4 different council members feel accountable to me on election day. So changing the system such that folks would give that up could be perceived, certainly, by folks in District 2 as a downside. I'll just share my own current thinking about this, which I'm strictly speaking for myself. I'm not speaking necessarily in my capacity as mayor or spokesperson. I'm just speaking as one council member, and we'll have to pretty much leave it at that since we have a second council member here on the call. We don't want to risk Brown Act issues by getting into a deep dive discussion about this, but I'm happy to share my personal thinking. If I were to request to put that issue on the agenda, on the council agenda, it would essentially be a reflection, a conclusion on my part that now is a good time to really focus everybody in Palm Desert on that issue, encourage them to get informed, encourage them to come to the city council and share their opinion. Much as we had a full sharing from the whole community on the issue of short-term rentals that took us into 1, 2 o'clock in the morning for a succession of meetings. Candidly, I don't think now is the right time to issue a call to all Palm Desert, get informed on the upsides and the downsides of districts. Come on down and offer your testimony virtually or in person. Let's all be engaged around this issue. And here's why. One of the things I've become painfully aware of in city service is you can't effectively communicate on multiple issues at the same time. People just have too much competition for their attention. In the technical era, folks have a computer, a phone going, and the TV going. We really have to be focused as a city if there's a key message and not be using a shotgun approach to talk about a variety of things. The key issue right now around which we must be engaging the public and encouraging the public to be up to speed and being informed is the pandemic. Right now, I hear confusion from people about whether they still have to follow best practices once they get a vaccine. If you're confused, the answer is yes. You do have to follow best practices after you've received the vaccine. For 6 to 9 months, this has to be our focus. I don't feel I would be serving the public good to ask for inclusion of the districting issue on the agenda. Should it be the focus of attention at some point in time so we can find out how the majority feel? Probably so, because it's becoming increasingly a topic of conversation. One possibility would be to include the issue on the ballot in 2022. Hopefully we'll be past the pandemic by that time. And potentially that would be a good way to find out how the majority feel. We're hearing from lots of people in public comment time, but you'd be surprised to know folks who like things the way they are don't usually show up for public comment time. So we can't necessarily just count comments that occur at the beginning of the council meeting to find out how most people feel. Those are my personal thoughts as one council member. Other questions? I'm looking for hands here. We may have to open this up to city representatives for questions if we can't get the rest of you. Linda, surely you have a question. You're such a thoughtful person. Well, if you don't have any questions, how about Carlos has another question.
So to say there were questions having to do with environmental issues. Carlos, you, I believe, had some.
Carlos.
Yeah, I was about to buy an electric car, and I was wondering if the city had plans or thinking about building, shade structures or mandating shade structures in parking lots, and so people could park and get solar energy and charge cars as well. I mean, the idea is that we've got to move towards a greener world. We absolutely have to. And so I don't know how far along the city is on this thinking, but for example, COD and the high schools have these shade areas with some of them, I think most of them have solar panels. Why are we not doing more of this? Why are we not sort of building this into requirements from all of the developers and expect them to step up and do what they need to do? Because, as part of their negotiating with the city. So environmental issues have to be number one to me, because if my grandchildren need a place to live. And if we don't have a place for them to live, then why are we doing anything?
Thank you. And we all need a place to live. Brian, could I ask you to share some thoughts on that topic?
Yeah, and good question, Carlos. A couple of answers. One, the city's invested its own money in doing just that in specific areas in and around the city. And also it's now a requirement of private development for so many spaces to provide just that. Now, it's not a requirement yet to install shade, but the industry is moving that way rapidly in creating, like, out of the box, basically a carport and charging station system that doesn't even have to be connected to the grid. So this is one that I'm suggesting is happening. It's happening pretty rapidly, and I can't think of one of the larger parking lots I haven't been through lately where I haven't either seen new chargers installed or something under construction. So I do believe there's quite a bit of that going on. And California Building Code's helping us significantly.
And yes, Jan.
Something, I had a call this morning, and just like Ryan said, there's so much going on that is being mandated by the state. So that will help us all. Additionally, I was on a call this morning with the Southern California Association of Governments, and we were talking to Senator Portantino. He has SB 45, and I excuse me if I get too wonky here. It's a climate resiliency bond. So we had the opportunity to talk to him about what we would like included. And SCAG is Southern California Association of Governments, which actually, Carlos, I know that you know what SCAG is. There are 6 Southern California counties, all of them except for San Diego, which would be the 7th Southern California county. At any rate, we all have different needs, although we all share so many needs that we needed to talk about. So I had the opportunity to talk to him about heat reduction tools and strategies and putting shade structures in, helping us with some of these heat island impacts, whether they're at schools where we've become overparked in retail centers. And those are all things that will be covered with this. I will be getting back with him further to talk to him more about what's involved and what wording we would like in the Coachella Valley to help us out with those topics. So those are things we were just talking about this morning, and we're going to keep talking about it because it's important to all of us.
And on the environmental front, there's something else exciting that I really want to make sure everyone's familiar with. Our local transit agency, Sunline, is so much more than just a transit agency. It's really a leader when it comes to innovative energy. And currently, Sunlight has secured both federal and state funding to create a pilot microgrid that uses solar energy to produce hydrogen fuel cell energy for operation of its buses, a complete system, which ultimately, should it be possible to scale up, has tremendous advantages compared to even electricity. It doesn't necessitate batteries that wear out and have to be disposed of. For example, it overcomes many storage issues. So this is some of the most important work that's being done around sustainable energy sourcing, and it's right here close by at Sunlight. Just a second, we have some questions in the chat. And while I'm catching up with those, could you, I see Michael Rosenkrantz is unmuted. So Michael, could you just share a bit about your Palms to Pines Parasports group while I'm catching up with a couple of questions here?
Thanks, Kathleen, appreciate it. Hi, everyone. So I'm Michael Rosenkrantz, and along with a number of other people, we've started Palms to Pines Parasports, which is an organization that works with people of all abilities, providing opportunities to play both outside and also virtual. We're offering programs 6 days a week. We're partnering with the Desert Recreation District. So for example, before this meeting, we were doing some archery at the Indio Community Center. We do wheelchair basketball, we do stand-up basketball, we do tennis and pickleball, we do meditation, we do hiking, we do cycling, and we do bocce ball, which is not bocce ball. Bocce ball is a Paralympic sport. So if you'd like to connect with us, I'm going to put both my email and our website in the chat. But we really, we're so up for collaborating. We do serve all of Riverside County, but our focus has been on Coachella Valley during the pandemic. So if you know of someone with, of a different ability who you think might benefit from our programs, we do everything. Everyone has to wear masks, even when you're playing basketball. We wash our hands frequently. People bring their own basketballs to basketball. We're looking to really make a much larger splash, of course, once COVID is brought under control, but we are doing programming now and really benefiting quite a few people. So thanks for the opportunity, appreciate it.
Thank you, Michael. Could you unmute Tatiana Morales for a question?
Hi, everyone. So my question is, I know that you said that you want to keep the council focused on the pandemic and your response to the pandemic. I will say that I do think that Palm Desert's response to the pandemic has been extremely lackluster, and in comparison with Palm Springs and other cities, I don't see anything that has been done as far as messaging or anything like that. But since that's the message that you're going to go with, that's what you guys want to concentrate on, do you plan on adopting Biden's message of 100 days of masking up and taking this opportunity to take that leadership that he's trying to give us and applying that to the city of Palm Desert and doing something about the fact that no one on El Paseo is taking this pandemic, masking, closing, anything seriously whatsoever because of a lack of enforcement? And I'm just wondering what exactly you guys are planning on doing that's going to make an impact at this point.
Tatiana, thank you for that feedback, and I take it to heart. Let me say three things. Yes, we will certainly build on any national leadership that's helpful in underscoring this message. So to that specific question, the answer is yes. I'm disheartened by your perception that a trip down El Paseo shows a lack of commitment to public health. Because when I travel down El Paseo, I see restaurant after restaurant after restaurant that invested heavily in infrastructure for outdoor dining that they are not using right now, with considerable financial pain to them. El Paseo looks vastly different than it did before Governor Newsom directed that even outdoor dining had to close. We've picked up the chairs from Lupine Plaza, which we celebrated as a site for outdoor dining. So candidly, I have to say that El Paseo reflects a considerable commitment to public health. At the same time, I hear your experience and I'm informed by your experience, and it motivates me to do more. And you will see more done until we're successfully through this together. We're completely open to some of the good ideas that have come through in the questions to this town hall, such as increased signage in certain locations. And I reaffirm that commitment. Carrie, you had a question not just about signage, but about sanitation stations. And that's an idea we probably won't be able to pursue. Is Steve Arian on the call just to speak to that? Steve, and then we'll get to a couple other folks who have raised hands.
I don't think Steve is on, but maybe Lori has some information.
Lori, would you like to take this question?
Oh, I'm sorry, Steve.
Here, I think there was, I'm so sorry. Steve is here and I think he was able to unmute now.
Go ahead, Stephen.
Oh, okay. Yeah, when we looked at everything regarding the sanitation stations, there were some questions about, where would we have these along El Paseo? How would they be best utilized? Is it better to maybe give people sanitizers versus having stations that, number one, we don't know, how we would maintain them properly, as well as other issues. So we're looking at them maybe possibly for our parks and other issues, but for now, they're not there. So I wasn't prepared to talk about this subject. So maybe Lori, if you have anything else to add.
I think not. I think there was also some discussion about the stations being a place that people would congregate, but I think you covered it.
Yeah, some of the other issues I saw in other cities that have them, that they weren't automated and people were less reluctant to use, to touch surfaces versus the automated ones, and maybe that's because the automated ones have maintenance issues and such. So there's also the topic of personal accountability and how majority of people would already have those type of issues such as masks and sanitizers with them as well. So maybe a better way would be to market maybe some sanitizers under the United Palm Desert logo and get out our efforts to promote proper social distancing and sanitation through the current means we have through our United Palm Desert.
Thanks, Stephen. And Gary, you were features that La Quinta is using something like this. So we'll by all means check with them to find out what their experience has been. We probably have just about 7 more minutes. I want to be sure to get to Todd Hunter, who has his hand up.
Hi. How are you, Mayor? And I have a question, I guess, for Mayor Pro Tem Jan Harnick, since you were talking about CSU Palm Desert. Now, when we first started looking at Genesis, I'm a Genesis resident, in 2015 when they started to look, and then we finally moved in 2017 from Orange County. They were talking about, you know, CSU PD, there's going to be a campus. What's the likelihood? I mean, we're talking a lot. I've seen it a lot. The when's the last time Cal State even, you know, added a new campus? Are we spending a lot? I know it's everybody's agenda from the election was, you know, this is a priority. This is, you know, everybody was. It's a big topic everyone likes to talk about, but what's the reality? When is there? Would there? You know. Can be, I guess, basically is my question.
Well, I'm going to do my best with that.
Okay.
I think the reality is strong. I believe the last campus, is San Marcos. That was a very expensive campus, and it was paid for by state dollars, which is one of those things where we're kind of ahead of the pack of other areas that might want it. Besides, when you look at, if you look at a GIS, if you look at the demographics and where our people are in our region, we have no four-year university near us, where we stand alone in that awful place of Southern California, and actually throughout California, of the other people who want campuses, who've talked about it. They all have that education near them. So they did a study. It included 5 different areas. We actually came out well ahead of everyone else as far as needs, and as far as the thing like the land that's already paid for. We don't have to go through any environmental issues with the land. It's there, it's ready to go. We have the buildings. And I think, you know, we all have these new sayings. I think the word for 2020 is pivot. And we have been pivoting. And whether it was because of a recession we had to pivot, or a pandemic we have had to pivot, we have done so, and we've done so very well. We are really putting just a full court press on Sacramento right now for this. And they just announced a couple, the mayor alluded to it before, some new programs. The hospitality is great with, it's a business emphasis. We have allied health, which we're happy about. We have an entrepreneurial program that's just been announced. And of course, we have the cybersecurity that she spoke directly of. So we have a lot of good things happening. I had a phone call about it today. This is not something we're sitting back and just kind of letting happen. We are up in Sacramento the best we can be during, let's give another 2020 phrase, during these unprecedented times. But we're up there with Zoom and with phone calls and peppering all of the lobbyists and representatives that we can. So we're really pushing on this. I think we have a good chance of giving it in that. And as I mentioned earlier, we're ahead of the game as far as the virtual and online educational model. And having said that, I have to just put one little asterisk there. We understand with allied health and with all of our cybersecurity and IT computer related sorts of courses of study, you have to have hands-on. There has to be labs. So we have those buildings. We know we have to continue growing in those areas. And those are really important areas of study for not only our region, but for, you know, everywhere. So I think we have a good chance, and the city has invested time, energy, and finances to make this happen, understanding the positive impact it will have for our economy and for everyone who lives here. We're still going.
So is it 5, 10 more? I mean, it's been 6 years that I've known about it. So is it 10 more years before that would happen? And I know there's other questions. But.
Yeah, and I wish I could answer that question. But you know, 10 years ago, we thought that it would be built out and then there was a recession and now we think things are going to happen and now there's a pandemic. We don't know, but I will assure you of this. We are going at it strong and we are not going to stop. But, and the land was given a long time ago. So it's been a long process and it's, shall we say, moving at the speed of democracy, but we're moving.
We
Thank
are
you, Todd.
we are
Thank you.
just about out of time. But I want to feature two other important facts about the city's response to the pandemic so that you can help us be better communicators by spreading the word. In addition to support for our businesses, the city's initiatives include two other forms of critical relief. The first is availability of $500,000 for rent relief. This is so important because the federal and the state moratoria postpone the due date for rent. They don't relieve folks of rent obligations. So to some extent, it could be kicking the can down the road. The press talks about a looming crisis, but in Palm Desert, we've structured an excellent program with Jewish Family Services as our social service partner to actually cover rent payments. That benefits both tenants and some of our small entrepreneurs who are property investors. The other dimension of our pandemic response is $500,000 to food providers. We know that places like Find Food Bank have at times seen a doubling of requests for their services. So we're working with a variety of entities like Martha's Village and Kitchen, the Jocelyn Center, to meet that critical need. So there are multiple prongs to what we're trying to accomplish to get us all through this together. When you have questions, check the COVID-19 tab on the city's website. I am deeply, deeply appreciative of what each and every one of you have had to say, including those of you who have been critical. That's key feedback. So we know where we can do more or do better. And I want to finish just by repeating how accessible we intend to be, so you don't have to wait for the next town hall. You can email or pick up the phone at any time to connect with your city. And we'll strive to have at least 3 or 4 more of these occasions during the course of the year. It's my deepest hope that ultimately they can be in person, since that's the best way for us to get to know each other. So thank you very, very much for coming.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor.
My pleasure.